Hey guys, Phil/Polygon here. Welcome to episode 30, man. Been a long time coming. Where have I been? What have I been doing? I'll touch on that a little bit down the ways. It's been a lengthy hiatus from Souls, not just in videos, but also in my playing. These clips going on in the background, I captured them, I don't know, about a week ago. It was my first time back doing any kind of PvP in Dark Souls in about 2 months. I think one exception was maybe when I popped on a stream with the Visionary and had a couple matches with him and Hero of Canton and got kicked around pretty substantially. But outside of that, I have not really done any PvP. So I'll talk a little bit about the hiatus. It's going to be a weird video because it's going to be one part channel update, one part look at the community, some thoughts on the landscape of PvP in Dark Souls 2, which contributes to kind of my absence. Hint, hint, hint. And then one part existential exploration in terms of where to go with the channel, looking back, looking ahead, interspersed with some Souls chat. So fair warning, not going to be any kind of nitty-gritty knockdown analysis of PvP or a weapon showcase or anything like that. Pretty fuzzy topics, pretty soft topics. But I did want to acknowledge 30 because I feel like that's kind of a milestone for the channel. I'm not that quick on the draw posting videos. I'm not that regular also posting videos. That's probably an important distinction to make. And, hitting 30 I think is kind of a milestone for the channel. YouTube years scaled to human years, kind of like dog years. I feel like the channel has turned 30. Metabolism slowing down a little bit. Can't eat the way it used to, starting to think pretty seriously about family and retirement and not out partying all night. The channel's growing up. No, I'm just being goofy. But in all sincerity, I did want to say thank you to everybody that has kind of checked things out along the way, played along, and anybody that has ever watched a video, anybody that has liked or disliked or subbed or unsubbed or participated in the comments, especially participated in the comments. I cannot express my gratitude enough. I have said this many times before in the past, but I will say it again. And I think the people that are kind of paying attention to this channel and participating with this channel are some of, if not the absolute coolest fucking people in the Souls community. And I wanted to say thank you so much to all of you guys. Just for, being cool, for being an awesome part of the community and just giving a look to my little channel. So, what's to come? Well, I said I was going to talk a little bit about the community, sort of the meta community, especially maybe a little breakdown of it in Dark Souls 2. I'll get into those reasons a little bit. I've also been back in Lordran lately. I've been bombing around with Dark Souls 1 a little bit. I might do a little bit of a nostalgia trip, talking about what I like with Dark Souls 1, what I miss with Dark Souls 1, what I really like with Dark Souls 2 that I think they kind of screwed up in Dark Souls 1. And actually, I should probably make a little preemptive strike here and talk about Dark Souls 1. Whoa, Nelly. So, quick disclaimer, this is not part of the original flow of the commentary. This is a little injection I edited in after the fact because I just cut about 3.5 minutes of full-on ranting, a full-blown tirade about Dark Souls versus Dark Souls 1. I'm going to go ahead and append it to the end of the video as like a little bonus clip. Maybe you guys get some jollies from it. Maybe there's some sense in it. I highly doubt it. But just know that if you're a semantic policeman, you're probably in store for a long and frustrating episode because I think I'm going to consistently say Dark Souls 1 instead of just Dark Souls. And we'll jump back into the normal commentary here. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about. And let's just get started. Episode 30, here we go. Oh, the intro's back too. Alright, so par for the course, if there is a par for the course anymore, it's been so long since I put out a video. We'll set a little bit of context. Here's a look at my build. This is just my standard spell sword build. I'm kind of goofing around with that blue flame. I was actually pretty inspired by a video I saw a while back from PvP Skills with a Z, where he was doing a little showcase of what he thought were the best weapons in the game, and the blue flame was on that list, and he was making that thing look so cool and so smooth that I got pretty inspired to go out and play around with it myself. He's kind of a beast as it is, so good on you, man. But I threw it on the raw path. I'm doing the Rob Flynn thing. You may also notice my Rob is only a +1, That's because, well, I'm pretty terrible, actually, at fighting both pursuers at the same time. I know there's a little trick where you can get cursed and one of them goes away and all that kind of stuff. But I also don't care that much. This character didn't have a Ring of Blades +2. I didn't want to make a detour to go get one. I was just kind of itchy to get back into PvP, see what had transpired in the time I was away. And the 15 AR difference between the +1 and the +2 is really not going to break my heart. I don't care that much. Also, please remember, I am rusty as hell, so cut me a wee bit of slack on any buffoonery you might see in the clips going on in the background. I think we should get away with it, though, because we're not actually talking much gameplay. You know what? And actually, as a side note, I don't know where this comes from, but I have found myself growing really skeptical of any PvP videos where the build is not shown. I feel like if I see any PvP videos and they don't show you the actual stats and level on the build, I just kind of assume it's like, yeah, you're like 300 plus, you're over leveled. That probably comes from the world we live in with Dark Souls 2, where stats and level have nothing to do with the matchmaking process. But yeah, I'm always pretty suspicious of that. And side note, have you noticed a thing? Maybe this is just me. Maybe this is just all in my head. Have you noticed a thing where there's almost like a subculture of putting together a high-level build, but trying to make it seem like a meta build, where maybe you're running around naked, maybe the gear you have is not fully upgraded, maybe you're handicapping yourself in some way and trying to pass it off as a 150 build or a 135 build or whatever it is, but in actuality you're like 5'10" or something like that. I don't know, maybe that's me. The only reason they would give it away is like by the castings. Like somebody will always forget and hit you with all these castings that just don't add up, and you're kind of like, oh, wait a minute, friend. That's just a goofy little side note. I find it kind of entertaining. But yeah, that's why I show my build. That's why I always like to show my builds, and that's why I always like seeing builds on other videos too. You know, for honesty, I guess, for one, transparency, but also just to kind of get inspired and ask questions and see what people are doing differently with little tricks and stat allotments and stuff like that. You know, maybe you see a build where somebody has 28 attunement, and you think like, that's kind of weird. Why did you not spend the extra levels to get one more slot? Is there some weird breakpoint at 28? What's the rationale behind that? Interesting. And just kind of get inspired by it and maybe look at things a little bit differently. But long rambling context there to say, like, here's my build. And so after all that, let's actually talk about something, shall we? Anything? Pick a topic and go. I mentioned in the head of the episode that I was feeling a little bit of grief around some community issues, so I thought I'd touch on that for a little bit. And this is maybe a long tangential explanation about some of the hiatus, some of the lack of motivation and lack of ability on my part to put out some videos. But I will start off by saying, like, I am a huge fan of the meta community. I love the shit out of the meta community in Demon Souls and Dark Souls, and what little is there in Dark Souls 2. And one of the things that I just thought was so cool, so absolutely stellar about this community is that it was just this huge group of players that were really passionate about the franchise, that just kind of sprung up from nothing. It was not an intended part of the game, and there were some, you know, loose rules that were established that were enforced in the game that we all just went out and participated in PvP, like the 120, 125 meta. Doesn't matter what the level is, I just loved the meta community. And in Dark Souls 2, you know, kind of through no fault of its, actually through complete fault of its own with the introduction of soul memory matchmaking, it kind of did away with that meta community. And there are people out there like myself who still adhere to some kind of meta and hope that some semblance of like similar level PvP remains in effect. But it really does, it's cheesy as it sounds, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit to see it dissolve in Dark Souls 2. I found the dynamics of the community really interesting. There were always schisms, you know, even in Dark Souls and Dark Souls 2, differing opinions, the Honor Brigade versus the all-out approach. But in Dark Souls 2, it seems like it's much more of a wild, loosely federated group of players. Some people say, like, you know, meta shmeta. Some people say, like, no, it should be 150. Some people say, no, it should be 135, whatever it is. And it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of unification. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of, it's not a tight system anymore. And it seems, to me at least, it seems that is a little bit less interesting to me. One of the things I loved talking about in all of my prior videos were like community outlooks and differing aspects of the community, weighing those things. But in Dark Souls 1 and in Demon Souls, it seemed like things were just a little bit more unified, and in Dark Souls 2, it just seems like a free-for-all. And that's, you know, the motivations behind that are totally fine if you don't want to adhere to a meta. I don't begrudge anybody the feelings. It's clear as day. The motivations, you know, the soul memory matchmaking, the penalties for losing in the Bob Arena, the limited use invasion items, like that stuff is all obvious and easy to see why the community is evolving the way it is. Actually, maybe community is the wrong word, too. It's not so much community, it's player base. The community is the same great community that there was in Dark Souls. Most of the same guys from Dark Souls are doing Dark Souls 2 stuff. Fantastic dudes. There's a bunch of great new contributors out there. So I really think the community is every bit as great in Dark Souls 2 as it was in Dark Souls 1. The player base, though, seems to be evolving in a direction that I'm not necessarily, for personal preference reason, interested in. I should probably be careful here too, because when I say player base, it sounds like I'm talking about people. Here come the disclaimers. And I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about like motivations and approaches to PvP. And, you know, further disclaimers, this is all broad sweeping generalization. This is all gross oversimplification. Yes, it is. But that's kind of my MO. That's kind of just how I talk. That's how I operate. Oversimplify everything. It makes the world very easy to understand. But I do feel like Dark Souls 2 makes it pretty easy to win with kind of the dissolution of level-based matchmaking, not to harp on that. It makes it pretty easy to win. You can just over-level, grab yourself a one-shot backstab weapon, spam some parries and win, or like buff a katana and three-shot somebody, or one-shot somebody with a Mastodon halberd backstab or something like that. And I've just never really been that interested in easy wins. And I see a lot of the, in my personal encounters with randoms out there, especially in the arena, but in the Iron Keep Bridge or in invasions and all that kind of thing, just kind of across the board, I see a lot of players want to feel really confident in their gear, want to be able to one-shot people, want to be able to win with as little resistance as possible. And that was absolutely present in Dark Souls as well. You know, you could, and in Demon Souls, you could cursed weapon your Dragonbone Smasher and just knock the crap out of people with a couple of hits. You could Dark Moon Blade buff your Great Club and one-shot backstab people with the Hornet Ring and stuff like that. Like that kind of thing was always there. But I do feel like it's a little bit more prevalent in Dark Souls 2 in day-to-day encounters. And that's not really a landscape I'm interested in. Kind of thinking back on some of my early videos when I was a complete and utter noob. The noobitude was just off the charts, and actually it still is. I mean, who are we kidding? I always shied away from like the best gear, the air quote best gear, and the strongest weapons and all that kind of thing, because I kind of liked going out and getting kicked around and learning from those experiences. And in Dark Souls 2, I feel like I'm not really learning a lot. I feel like it's not, in my experience, again, personal experience, disclaimer, it's not terribly rewarding for me in the current landscape. And so, you know, the lack of videos for the past couple of months is not for lack of effort. I've sat down on myriad occasions with a pile of clips and tried to talk to him, lay down some commentaries, and I find myself with just nothing to say. And this by being primarily a commentary channel, if I got nothing to say, I'm kind of up shit creek. Which is a misnomer, actually. Did you know Shit Creek is actually a beautiful little tributary off the Nile River with lush vegetation and frolicking fauna, and all the women are beautiful and all the men are strapping and handsome? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just being goofy. But yeah, I'm just personal preference only. I don't enjoy the landscape of Dark Souls 2 PvP. In my experience, 90% PC, 10% PS3. I'm just not that interested in going out there and trying to see how badly I can beat the crap out of somebody, which I see more and more in Dark Souls 2. And that's not the fault of anything. It's not the fault of the game. I actually really still love the game. I'm playing a lot of PvE. That a lot of people find boring, but I don't. I'm actually still having a good time. I'm just not participating in the PvP. And you can absolutely argue, you know, this is a failure on my part. It's a failure of me to evolve to the current mechanics of the game, to the new systems in the game. And that's true. You're absolutely right. I'm failing to evolve. I miss the days of like the meta community. And that's fine. I'll just not participate as much in Dark Souls 2 PvP. Just because I don't I miss that aspect of it. So yes, I'm absolutely failing to evolve. I'm not whining about it. I'm just saying that it's like I don't really have a lot to talk about in terms of that side of things with Dark Souls 2. And I know there's a ton of guys out there who are having fun doing PvP at the 150 meta, and that's cool. You're doing something right. Keep doing it. And all the guys out there that are, you know, meta shmeta dudes that are having fun, cool. Keep doing it. You're doing something right. Vaya con Dios, man. I'm just saying, in as long and meandering a way as possible, the current landscape is not really my bag, and I don't find myself that inspired to talk about it. And this absolutely sounds like a swan song, dude. This sounds like, here are all the reasons why I'm going to stop making Dark Souls 2 PvP videos. Maybe that's what I'm saying, but that's not my intent. I'm just saying, like, currently, in its current form, I don't really have a lot to talk about. I don't have a lot to say, because I'm just not that into it currently. So I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll go back and finish the Myriad series that, that's my second use of the word Myriad. The many series that I have orphaned out there that are just rotting on the vine. I don't know if there's any interest in that. Maybe I'll play some other stuff or upload some other stuff like the little Final Fantasy 3 shot I did. I don't know. I'm still going to be playing. Don't get me wrong. If you see me online on Steam or PSN, hit me up and say, like, let's have some matches, because that is the type of PvP that I absolutely love. And I'm just having a difficult time finding that randomly. So please hit me up and let's go get our jollies. But yeah, that's just kind of where my head's at. And I'm gonna bring this to a close because I'm suddenly melancholy. I'm all morose and shit. I need to go have myself a good cry. So I'm gonna bring this to a close. I just kind of wanted to say hi, give a little bit of an update, a little bit of talk on some community thoughts and stuff like that. Let me know what you guys are thinking too. Are you feeling the same, like, conflicting emotions with a lot of this stuff? Are you in the same boat? Are you out there just having a rip-roaring time? And if so, you know, let me know what you're doing. I could use a good shot in the arm of inspiration. So definitely hit me up. Feedback and comments are, as mentioned, fantastically appreciated. I want to say thanks again to everybody, and yeah, I'll go ahead and shut up. I think, you know, so I had a pretty ridiculous little tirade at the beginning that I think I'm going to append to the end of this video and call it a day. So I will definitely catch you guys around. I'll figure out something to do, and thanks again. Seriously, thanks again, and bye. Talking about what I like with Dark Souls 1, what I miss with Dark Souls 1, what I really like with Dark Souls 2 that I think they kind of screwed up in Dark Souls 1. And actually, I should probably make a little preemptive strike here and talk about Dark Souls 1. Because, oh my god, I'm going to derail myself right out of the gate. Nah, let's go with it. Let's talk about Dark Souls 1, because this has been driving me absolutely daffy for several months, actually probably since the game was released. These people that correct you for saying Dark Souls 1. I'm saying Dark Souls 1 for clarity. To me personally, it seems like it flows a little better when you say Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 1, but there's always going to be those people who say, actually, there is no such thing as Dark Souls 1. There is Dark Souls and there is Dark Souls 2. There is no Dark Souls 1. If you say that, you are wrong. Well, just congratulations, right? Put on your crown. You're right. There is no Dark Souls 1. That's not what it says on the box. Cue the Queen song. You are the champion of the universe. You win. But, my god, oh my god, we're gonna go off into, like, philosophy of language. You know what, let's roll with it. Let's go all Hillary Putnam on this shit, okay? Is there anybody walking the planet who doesn't understand what someone means when they say Dark Souls 1? No. Is anybody thinking, like, Dark Souls 1? What is this? Is this an Xbox One exclusive? I know Dark Souls. I know Dark Souls 2. I don't know anything about Dark Souls 1. What is it? What is it? What is it? No, we're talking about the first one. And it's clear as day that we're talking about the first one. And if you are so hung up on being right versus being clear, in all of the battles you can pick with life, in all of the battles, in all of the fights you can pick with existence and living right. That seems so petty and goofy. And if you legitimately don't understand what someone means when they say Dark Souls 1, ask, I guess. I think these are the same people who say, you know, you ask them, hey, have you ever seen Star Wars? And they say, actually, I've seen 6 of them. I presume you're talking about A New Hope. Yes, you're talking about A New Hope. It's kind of the common vernacular when you say Star Wars, you're talking about A New Hope, Episode 4. When you ask somebody, are you watching Game of Thrones? You don't say, well, you know, I'm I'm only watching the first season because technically that was Game of Thrones, which is book 1 in A Song of Ice and Fire. No! There is the only purpose of language, the only reason language exists is for people to communicate ideas and concepts, right? If I tell you that bing bang blick gam jar, it's absolute gibberish. Language is absolute gibberish until there is meaning attributed behind it, right? If I draw a picture of a circle and I point at it and I say bing bang, suddenly you understand that when I say bing bang, I mean circle. And if I draw a picture of a triangle and say gam jar, whatever the hell I said, you know that a triangle is a gam jar. And then if I explain the concept of blick means does not equal or is not, and then I say bing bang blick gam jar, you suddenly know that I mean a circle is not a triangle. You say circle, I say bing bang. You say Dark Souls, I say Dark Souls 1. And as long as you know what I'm talking about, the language is serving its meaning. So there's no need to get all bent out of shape and say like there is no such thing as Dark Souls 1. What a little dipshit thing to say. There's absolutely no need when you hear someone say Dark Souls 1 for you to come out like fucking Clippy and say like, actually, it looks like you're talking about Dark Souls 1. Little red squiggle underneath Dark Souls 1, it's incorrect. Oh my goodness, my heart is beating fast. Why did I get so heated at that? I think I saw a tweet a while ago. This is exactly where it came from. I saw a tweet a while ago that I'm not going to attribute, but it just gave me rage because it was a friendly reminder. There's no such thing as Dark Souls 1. It's like, you little dick. Of course there is a such thing. Everybody knows what you're talking about. Oh my goodness. Being right over being clear. Correctness over clarity. Terrible. Terrible. I need to take a deep breath. I need to breathe. And you know what? I think I'm going to cut that. I am going to cut this. Note to self, cut this part out because it is totally out of place in the intro and it is not a good fit. Right after I got done saying how cool everybody is for me to go in and be not cool. Going off on the philosophy of language in Dark Souls 1 versus Dark Souls and oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Let's get back into the video as originally scheduled. Pause for editing. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about, and let's just get started. Episode 30, here we go. Oh, the intro's back too.